welcome to the Fertility Conversations podcast. The goal of this podcast is to create more awareness about infertility and to provide support to people trying to conceive. Thank you for listening today, and we hope you will be encouraged. And now, here is your host, Ola.
Welcome to episode 15. Today I'm joined by lovely guest Natalie, all the way from the UK. Natalie is a fellow infertility warrior who endured 12 IVF cycles, numerous tests, consultations, surgeries, injections, and headache before having a rainbow baby last year in 2019. Natalie is active on social media and can be reached on myivf_miracle. Her details will also be in the show notes. So welcome, Natalie, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Ola. Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Yay, thank you. So to start off, please tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I am of Zimbabwean and South African heritage and live in the UK. Just love to travel, love to cook. Oh, yeah, and I have a gorgeous husband.
Yes. I can confirm that. I've seen the pictures on the internet. Yeah.
Thank you. I also run an online clean beauty business, and also our journey led us to also opening and running a fertility platform, which is an app that helps you record your fertility journey. Yes, it's still very much a work in progress, but we're almost there.
Okay, looking forward to that. That sounds great.
Yes, great.
Wonderful. And was there a particular time you knew you wanted to be a mom?
I think coming from an African heritage, it's instilled in you from little that, you know, your children are talked about before you're even a teenager, before your puberty. Yeah. You're always told when you're children. So it's very much spoken into your life. And I think getting married, I knew even before I was married that I was passionate about having children and wanted to have children as soon as possible. So when it didn't happen immediately, I was quite taken aback, and it just felt like this isn't right. Why? So there were a lot of questions for me.
Right. And can you tell us about the first time you met your husband?
Our story is very much an online story.
Oh, really?
I saw him on 5 and I slid into his DMs and said hi.
Wow, that's amazing.
History. After that, we chatted every day. We were then both traveling in the US at the same time, but in different states. And we kind of chatted for about 3 weeks, and then we met up when we both got back to the UK. And since then, we've been inseparable.
Wow, that's amazing. And can you tell us about your infertility journey from the beginning till now?
Okay, so thinking about fertility journey, we got married in 2008.
Okay.
And more or less started, but before then, we knew we wanted to get pregnant. So previously I'd been on the pill, stopped taking the pill, and just thought, it would happen. I thought 3 months in, still nothing. But take note, we have a very strong Christian faith. So for us, there was prayer, there was fasting, there was seeking God's face. And we did that for, I think, about 5 years. So we didn't take that initial step of going to see doctors for at least 5 years, because we strongly and fervently believed that it would have happened. And I think just coming from an African background, you tend to hold back and you don't ask the questions immediately. It's always like at God's appointed time. And I think also in the church, a lot of the time, sometimes you're fobbed off. Or you're made to believe that just pray and fast, God will do it. And that's not saying he won't do it, but you're not then actively pursuing your journey. And so it was 2014, 2015, 2013, I went for some investigations. I went to see the GP initially, and he was like, just go back and try. And I was like, no, this doesn't feel right. I remember having conversations with people at work. There were 2 women in particular. One who sat me down, a Kenyan lady, and she had done multiple IVF cycles. And she just said to me, Natalie, you should start seeking medical help. And there was another lady, a British lady, and she said, just go see the GP. And she said to me, just really lay it on thick that he actually takes you seriously. Did that, and then that kind of kick-started some investigations. And after that, we spent a lot of time, I think about a year and a half, on just investigations before we finally decided, no, we're going to take charge of our journey. And we consulted a private clinic. And that's when our first cycle began. We thought that we'd do one cycle. I remember going into it and be like, God is in control. I'm doing one cycle and only one cycle.
Yeah.
Little did I know. So the first cycle was a disaster. Numerous issues. I was overstimulated. They collected the eggs too late. And then just before transfer, they found out I had a massive fibroid, which nobody saw beforehand.
All the time?
Yeah. That was actually within the uterus cavity. So transfer was canceled. That set us back for about 6 months until I finally had that removed. But within that there was a big faith journey of just praying and fasting and just seeking God's face, really, in that time. And then I would say from that time, from 2015 all the way up until 2019, we just did back-to-back cycles. We would finish one cycle and go straight into another. And during that time, we also had 7 miscarriages. So
there was I'm so sorry. Wow.
Thank you. There was a lot of heartbreak. There was a lot of heartbreak. There was a lot of almost there. And I think, the amazing thing is it always seemed to happen near Christmas time. I remember being pregnant once and going for a scan, and it was the viability scan. And it was supposed to be 7 weeks, and they saw a sac but no baby, and that was heartbreaking. And I remember going for another scan, which was the 12-week scan, and the baby had stopped growing. So various things. But for me, the amazing testimony is Joshua was born to the date of previous miscarriages.
Oh, wow.
In December. He's a December baby. So for me, it was God just restored.
Such a miracle.
And it was just a season of restoration. But I think it was just back-to-back cycles. We cycled in the UK. We cycled in Greece. We cycled in Czech Republic.
Wow.
So there was a lot of traveling and loads of research, a lot of research. We did loads and loads of research. And I think my journey changed when I started reading medical journals and medical papers instead of just threads online, and really taking charge of the journey.
Wow.
Yes.
I'm so sorry. You went through so much.
Yes, it was tough. It was tough, but I just glorify God through it all.
Yeah. What kept you going? Because, it can seem so, yes, of course, you have hope and you have faith, but when there are constant disappointments, that faith,
tough. I think your faith gets tested. You get tested as a person. And to say I had faith throughout, I would be lying. I remember our final cycle, the cycle that got Joshua. I remember sitting on the bed, and it was the frozen embryo transfer, and thinking, I'm not going. I was tired. I was done. I wasn't doing it anymore. And my husband then went into what I call coach mode. And he was just like, you can't give up now. He's like, if you give up now, will you forgive yourself? And so we had miscarried in December 2018, February 29, then December 2018, we had the miscarriage. And I remember my husband bought me this book, Is Your Body Baby Friendly? I was so mad, I could have thrown it at him. Because I was like, how dare he? But not only did he buy that, he then bought a Moses basket and he put it in our bedroom. And I was so angry, I could have thrown it out the window. I was like, what is wrong with this man? Because I think part of me I'd given up, not given up, but I was tired. I was so tired. And I remember I reluctantly read the book, but there were so many things in the book that resonated and made sense, whereas certain doctors just fobbed me off. And I then made an appointment for consultation with a reproductive immunologist, Mr. Gorgie, in Harley Street. And I went along to the appointment, didn't expect much, but that really was the key for me.
Wow.
to understanding some of the issues we had previously. And I think it was just that stage of sitting back and thinking, okay, I can't give up now. I've come so far. I just one last push. And I remember doing the frozen embryo transfer and just saying, Lord, it's only you, it's in your hands. And every step of the way, so I remember getting the BFP, and even that was just like, yeah, okay. 12-week scan, I cried all the way to the scan. I didn't want to go. I just wanted no part of it. And we go to the 12-week scan, and there's Joshua kicking around and just having a jolly time. And I was like, okay.
Wow. Wow. Thank God.
Oh,
And
yes.
you're so strong.
It's only
There are no other words, yeah. And that must have cost so much. Doing cycles in the UK, because I know the UK is so expensive, especially when you have to go privately, and then traveling overseas as well. Wow.
I think, yeah, it is very expensive. But for me, one of the reasons for also going overseas was the level of expertise.
Okay.
The UK is great, but I found a lot of it was, if you don't fit inside the box of standard fertility treatment, they're not willing to tweak or see what works best for you.
Okay.
So that was challenging. And I think for me, it was finding a clinic that would work with what was my protocol, because I would say nobody knows your body better than you. Exactly. You know how you're responding to the drugs. You know how you're feeling. I remember sitting once and thinking, I think before egg collection, I think I've ovulated. I think, the eggs have matured. I remember thinking that and going into egg collection 2 days later, and she's like, no eggs, 0. That was devastating after putting everything into it and having not a single egg. And this is after going for the scans and having more than 14 follicles and them being all ripe and everything.
IVF is so much, right? Like everything has to do with timing, the right timing, and people just don't realize how much goes into it.
There's so much, as you know, so much. Wow. And I think planning is key, because I got to the stage of where I actually have journals. So I have journals of cycles, of previous cycles, like down to what I ate, to how I felt. And I think this was the birthing of the app, because I have it all written in journals. And my husband, very analytical. He's a finance head. That's how his mind works. Spreadsheets upon spreadsheets. And we had this master document, which we would take to consultations, and they'd say, oh, we suggest you do this. And we're like, no, we did this, and this was the outcome.
Oh, wow. So, you weren't ready. You were.
Because when you're paying that much, you've got to own that time. Because it got to the point where I was like, okay, if I'm going to pay £400 for this consultation, it's got to be worth it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. So you became an advocate for yourself, even way beyond what's required.
I think that's key. And I think that's what helped me keep going. I think it got to a point of where, yes, there's the emotion. It's very raw. And I think I have this saying where I say, roll the dice again. It's okay. That didn't work. But you know what? We've got to do it again. It was almost like a project. So we almost project managed our treatment. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And the doctor you saw on Harley Street, was that for recurrent loss then? The doctor, okay.
Yes, because our issues were reproductive immunology. We had, that was what was because of the recurrent loss. And there were certain things that, as a woman of color, it's not the same treatment as to like a Caucasian woman. So my biggest issue was one of my biggest issues was absorption of progesterone. So they were giving me a bog standard progesterone, and my body just was not absorbing it. So when I saw the reproductive immunologist, he was like, it's not enough. And I just thought, nah, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Then we did the blood tests, and the amount of progesterone was almost like I was taking nothing at all. So I had to take 3 times the dose.
Wow.
So it's a little tweak like that. Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing. God, you went there. And and it seemed like just what was needed at the right time, and everything else just fit in.
Yes, and I think it was things like he suggested a laparoscopy, and I was like, "But I had a laparoscopy in 2013," and he was like, "Let's do it again." And I remember taking charge because I could have waited to do it on the NHS, but I was like,
Yeah.
no, I need to take charge. We went private. We used private healthcare to do that. So it meant that I could get scheduled 7 days after the consultation.
Oh, nice. Right.
And it was through that investigative laparoscopy that they actually found that there were some other issues as well that needed addressing. There were multiple adhesions, which there was no way of telling that from a scan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank God. You're such a
Oh, yes.
testimony. It's just amazing. You
Yes,
know,
thank you.
yeah. I know you mentioned your faith, helped you and believing throughout the whole journey, but did you also have other means of support? Wow.
Yes, we do have we have a close family network. Like I have 5 sisters. My
Okay, very
sisters
nice.
are also to different degrees. And our moms have been amazing. Our moms have been there when the treatment didn't work. They've been there when initially we would share we were going for treatment, and then we stopped sharing because there's the
Yeah.
expectation and then there's the disappointment. But I remember once after I had going through a 12-week scan and finding no heartbeat. My mom didn't know I was pregnant, and calling from the hospital and just saying, "Mom, come now." And her just turning up, throwing down
Yeah.
everything, turning up and just being there. So that was great. I also have an amazing network of friends. Through the
Oh,
journey, I lost some friends, but then I kind of thought, were they really friends? Then
exactly.
there
Yeah.
were the ones who were there always just trying to understand what was going on. They asked the hard questions. They asked questions sometimes I felt uncomfortable with, but eventually I understood they were coming from a place of love. But then there was also turning to the forums online, the fertility show.
Oh, yeah.
Instagram was amazing. I've made some really good friends on Instagram who I've met in real life as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And
Nice.
let's call them friends now.
Yeah.
But it helped with the highs and the lows of just being able to post on Instagram when I was completely devastated and knowing they knew exactly how I felt.
Yeah.
That really brought comfort to me.
Wow. That's wonderful. And were you seeking for support? Is that why you set up the Instagram account initially, or?
Yes, I think the initial time, I remember initially setting up the Instagram account for just wanting to understand the journey more. I think when I first set up the account, we had done, I think, probably 3 cycles, and I just thought I need to know more.
Yeah.
And I remember starting to follow certain accounts, and then I thought, okay, I started then to document our journey as well, just so that I could trace. When I realized we're going beyond 2 or 3 cycles, I thought I need to be able to go back and track. This was before the spreadsheet was born or anything.
Yeah.
And for tracking, and also just to learn from others, because I've learned so much from the Instagram community.
Yes, it's a wonderful community.
It's
And it was lovely. I mean, of course, I met you by finding your story and reading it. I just found it really amazing that, being Black and, it doesn't even matter if you're Black and African, but Black and African gives it a little bit more push. The fact that people don't, you don't talk about this, and then even if you're going to talk about it, you don't put your face out there, but, you just put it all out like this is it. Like, this is the reality, and you shared so much, and I thought that was pretty amazing. What made you do that? Like, I mean, what it's like.
I think for me, I had to own my journey.
Yeah.
And, I couldn't sugarcoat it. Yes, I don't put everything on there, but it's my journey. It's my journey to tell. And for me, it was a way of also finding comfort and solace. But it was just like, this is me, warts and all, take it or leave it. And also to encourage other women, Black African women, women of color, because I find we're not open enough. We don't talk enough. We don't share enough.
No.
And it's tough.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Because women within my circle, since our journey, I've actually found out that people have started to approach me to say, guess what? They struggling. They've had,
Oh, that's wonderful.
there's
That, I'm
one
telling you.
friend who's had more than 10 miscarriages, and we had
Oh
no
no.
idea.
Wow.
And I think also within the African community, it's seen as, oh, if you're getting pregnant, it's not infertility, even if
Exactly.
there's
Yeah.
multiple.
Yeah. You start
And it's
hearing
like,
at least you can get pregnant. Yeah.
yes. And this, that infertility is not a dirty word. It's,
Yeah.
we can talk about it. We can support each other, and we can just prop each other up through the journey.
Yeah. And I think just also acknowledging the fact that just because they say you have infertility does not mean you don't think you can overcome it. Because I find that many times people are like, oh, don't say that word, don't claim that. I'm like, well, it's not like I'm claiming it.
No.
It is the definition itself is what it is, right? Now you can still go on and get the children that you want and move beyond it, but it's a reality. But
That's it. And I think this is, for me, it also changed my faith, because I was in that, oh, I can't say it because I'm naming and I'm claiming, and
exactly, yeah.
I name my children, and by faith, and I fasted and I prayed. And I think it was, I was pregnant with Joshua. I was about 7 months pregnant, and I was talking to one of my sisters. And then I realized that, yes, all the prayers and the fasting and everything was leading to this moment.
Yeah.
It was leading to the treatment. It was leading to everything. And there's nothing wrong with doing both. And I remember attending the Mothers Summit. And it was during that summit that the pastor said that it's okay to do fertility treatment.
Oh, hallelujah. I love that when the pastor said that.
And I was like, yes, it is.
Exactly.
And she's like, whatever method you need to become a mother, pursue it. Yeah. Whether it's fertility treatment, whether it is adoption, pursue it.
Wonderful.
And I think sometimes within our communities, we don't allow that platform to say that it's okay.
Yes.
These things happen.
Exactly. And it's fine. And we need to say that more, because people just think, no, you shouldn't say that. And I think more churches and religious places, either whatever religion people are, people just need to show more support and understand that it's a reality, and people shouldn't be made to feel, because I know some people that they would not even go check the fertility clinic. Exactly, right, for the first 5 years. And you think,
that was me. I was like, nope, that's not my portion. That's not what God has promised me. Yeah. And I was adamant that I was only doing it one way. Yeah. And I think I had to change my mindset and change my prayer life as well. It didn't mean that I wasn't naming it and claiming it. And I think I remember a moment where it dropped, and I remember sitting with the fertility doctor, and I was like, but why hasn't it worked? And he said, I can only do so much. And then I had to remember that, yes, they can put the egg and the sperm together, they can put the embryo back, but it's only God who puts the thigh bone to the hip bone.
Exactly, yeah. And that's so true.
And I realized that, yes, they're assisting, but they're not God.
Yeah. Well said. Thank you. And would you say infertility has changed you as a person? Because
100%.
Has it changed you for the better, or what do you think you've taken out of it?
The better. I think it's after doing so many cycles, I am tenacious, I am resilient.
Yes, you are.
I learned to be agile. My husband has a saying where he says, don't dwell. And sometimes that might sound really cold, but if you're dwelling, you can't make decisions. If you're dwelling, you can't move forward. And I thought, okay, I remember a cycle would fail, and immediately he'd start planning the next cycle.
Oh my.
Which
is amazing, right? But sometimes you're probably like, no, not now. Like
no, and it was tough, but it just taught me not to dwell on the moment, but to be agile and keep moving forward. And I think if I take that principle and apply it to any area of my life, nothing is impossible.
True. And I know people say, of course, it must be very hard, especially having disappointments and losses. What kept you going? Like, how was it with Joshua? Because your mind can play tricks on you. How's it on a daily basis? You know, counting down till.
You know, Ola, I didn't believe I was having a baby until he arrived. It sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, because I think another thing I want to say is, for people who are waiting, you think the journey is over when you get the BFP, or the journey is over when the baby arrives. It's a constant.
Yeah.
You know, the journey is not over. And I remember going to every scan almost expecting bad news, because that was a defense mechanism, because that's what I was accustomed to. And I remember when going into one of the doctor's surgeries in Harley Street, and on the wall was a scripture from, I think it's Philippians 4, and it says, whatever is good, whatever is kind, whatever is noble, focus on that.
Wow.
And I had to, so that was like my shield. Every time the bad thoughts happened, I used to be like, okay, is this noble? Is it true? Is it good? So I had to keep going back to that. I had to keep, and that's what kept me focused. But then I would say, even when I remember getting ready to go to the hospital and thinking, okay, this is it, he's coming. But still thinking, okay, are we going to come home with the baby? Which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But it's true. And even the first week, I kept thinking, is he staying? Wow. Which is sad, but
yeah.
And I remember my sisters just praying me through. I remember one of my younger sisters, especially, she would just call and pray, and because there's all this euphoria afterwards, but because of that, doing so many cycles, you stuck also in PTSD. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that, work through it, and pray through it.
Yeah. That's very good that you also mentioned that PTSD. I think it's, like you said, there's more awareness about it and the fact that it can happen. And it doesn't mean you're not grateful for the child, but it's just after so much that you've gone through in the journey, it can happen.
Yes. And I remember one of my cousins called me and she prayed for me and she said, may your mother would be joyful. And I think that was a major key for me, because I thought, yes, I'm doing this, but it needs to be joyful.
Yeah.
And taking joy in the little moments whereas before the journey, you thought every moment will be celebrated. But sometimes when you've gone through so much, you almost want everything to be perfect, and realizing it's not perfect, it's okay.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And how the whole journey, I mean, of course, I know you said that your husband was very, constantly encouraging and pushing you to move on to the next. And of course, even buying the Moses basket and the book, is your buddy baby friendly? Funny enough, I saw that book last night on the internet and I thought, oh, what kind of book is this? But
amazing.
But I probably go back and check it now, because I thought, okay, that's a weird title. But the whole journey, how did it impact your relationship?
I would say it's brought a depth to it. Yes, it's brought us closer, but it's brought a depth. And so a lot of people say that it makes them closer, but I think it's brought a depth also because a lot of the time, the men on the journey are taking care of the women. So he was my nurse, he was my comforter, he was everything. But then sometimes you also have to stop in the journey and think, how is he? Is he okay?
Yeah.
I had to then also sometimes stop and just check, are you all right? Because he was so used to being the coach. Sometimes I had to take a step back and just coach him, and also give him the opportunity to go watch a football match, or to take a day off from fertility as well, infertility.
True. Yeah. And knowing all what you know now, after going through all of this, what is the one piece of advice you'll give your younger self?
I'd say dream big. Dream big, keep pushing, and don't give up.
Wonderful. And any book, well, you might have already answered that, but any book you would advise anyone going through infertility to read?
I would say initially it starts with an egg, because I remember when I went to my first IVF cycle, I had no clue. I had no clue about anything. And I think for the doctors or for the clinics, they don't do much education. So you don't understand. anything. They kind of talk you through the process, but you don't understand about egg quality. You don't understand about sperm quality. You don't understand all of that. And I actually got a lot of great advice from my acupuncturist. And he said to me, like, would you just take seed and throw it in the ground, or would you fertilize the ground?
Wow.
And, you know, even like acupuncture, for example, that for me, from a faith perspective, at first I was like, I'm not doing that. That's not for me. It's
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Until I found the right person and understanding that it was purely medical, because in my mind, it was going to be chanting and all kinds of stuff.
Exactly.
And it was none of that.
Yeah. It's so funny the things we think, right? Because you've just been told, oh no, that's not good, and you're just like, now I'm gonna stay away.
No, we don't do that.
I know, right? Without even trying it.
No, but it's so funny because now all my family know my acupuncturist by name.
Wow.
They're like, oh, you don't. So I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh wow.
So I'd say, going back to your question,
Mm-hmm.
I would say it starts with an egg, because it just helps you understand. When I read that, I fully understood then, oh, I have a part to play in this as well. And I think when you're paying such large sums of money, you think they'll take care of everything. But they don't.
And they should be taking care of everything, right?
They should.
Yeah.
They should. And I would say, for me, especially if you've tried multiple times and it's not working, is your body baby friendly? For me, it was such an important book, because I read it and for once I felt somebody understood what my body was doing.
Right.
Because, you know, when you go for the WTF meeting and you're there for 30 minutes and you're like, what should we do differently? And they're like, oh, let's just do the same again.
Yeah. You're like, seriously?
No. You know, I finally felt that, and it's through that book that I then found the reproductive immunologist in Harley Street, because he's mentioned in that book. And I thought, okay, let me make an appointment. Yeah. Yes, I could spend £250 on a consultation. It could mean nothing, or it could be the master key.
Exactly. Well, that's amazing. I'm going to check out that book. Like I said, I saw it and I just thought, okay, you're trying to be funny.
Reading.
Yeah, wonderful. And if you had one quote or word of affirmation that kept you going as well during the journey.
Okay, so one quote. I'm a word of many words. But I would say something I would often say to myself is that God is in control. He knows the end from the beginning. Yes, that would be my quote, my one quote that kept me going throughout.
Wonderful. And as a wrap up, Natalie, any words of encouragement or hope for any other person or couple dealing with infertility?
Okay, I would say lean into each other, you know, really be kind and supportive of each other, and, you know, just hold on in faith. I would also say take ownership of your journey. Just because you're paying money and think that the doctors are doing everything, no, do your research, aggressively pursue your journey, understand what are the underlying issues, take ownership. And I would say be equipped for every visit. Don't take it for granted that the doctors know everything. They know a lot, but they don't know you, and they don't know your journey.
Well said. That's perfect. Thank you so much, Natalie, for coming on the show today, for encouraging us all, for encouraging me, for letting us know it's possible, and the power of faith and holding on and trying once again every time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. It's been awesome.
Yes, and so your strength and testimony has been really inspiring. I'm sure that your story will inspire a whole lot of people, and we're so thankful for baby Joshua, who is so handsome. Thank you. And of course, like I said earlier, for anyone listening, if you do want to connect with Natalie, she's on Instagram, very active at myIVF_miracle. And as she said, we're looking forward to our app that's going to help us all out from her, so much research that she did and, help us all out during this whole journey. So thank you so much, Natalie. It's been a pleasure having you on here.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Fertility Conversations podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a 5-star rating and subscribe. Follow us on Instagram at Fertility Conversations. If there are any topics you would like to have discussed, please send an email to fertilityconversations@gmail.com. Be sure to tune in next week for our next episode. Thank you again for listening. Take care of yourself and do stay hopeful.